Part 27. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 263. I didn't know your appearance or Kaido's whereabouts, and I tried my best to fight you. There is no evidence, even if they suspected. What can they do to me, an admiral? Fujitora avoided Shiroyu's gaze, took out the sword in his arms and looked at it carefully, as if his slender sword contained some secret code of swordsmanship. Evidence. The world government gave O'Hara the order to kill demons. Did they provide any evidence? Do you think the Navy can protect you? Or is it that the world government will take into account the Navy's wishes when it acts? Baiyu made a fool of himself with disdain on his face. He didn't mean it, but with the way the Navy behaved, even if it wasn't the watchdog of the world government, it wouldn't be that good. Sure. Fujitora said decisively, with a very confident tone. However, he was afraid that only he knew whether it was true or false. After saying that, he stopped sitting and stood up leisurely, taking 2 slow steps to the black screen. Quietly looking at the dark curtain in front of me, like a pensive philosopher. The Navy is an entity that upholds justice at sea and will never bow to power. The two of them were in a stalemate like this for a long time. Fujitora finally lost his composure and spoke quietly. Laugh. Self-deception. Do you believe this yourself? Baiyu sneered and asked back. Looking at his back calmly, his eyes exuded a light that could see through everything. Otherwise, what can I do? As an admiral, I can only do this. Fujitora slowly turned around, his originally resolute and unyielding face was replaced by decadence and weakness. Of course you have other options. Baiyu curved the corners of his mouth, put away the Jinkunluo in his hand, and showed a faint smile on his face. What? Other ways? Please do tell me. Fujitora's face suddenly glowed with energy. It was clear that his eyes were closed tightly, but it always felt like there was a light coming out from inside. Of course. The smile on Baiyu's face grew stronger, and the long-tail tone whetted his appetite. After laying the groundwork for so long, we can finally close the net. I really thought he was so idle that he deliberately used a ghost technique just to isolate Fujitora from talking nonsense to him for so long. Of course it's for him. Baiyu's eyes suddenly burst out with bright light, and he stared at Fujitora. Baiyu has long been greedy for his gravity fruit. Fujitora's development of the gravity fruit was too superficial in Baiyu's eyes. Simply used to control the impact, the gravity multiplier in the surrounding environment is really a waste. That is one of the 4 fundamental forces, the subordinate force of gravity. What's the point of catching a meteorite fall in the meteorite belt? As long as you're strong enough, even if you pull the moon down, it's not a bad idea. Especially after experiencing the Auranos incident, Baiyu's coveting of gravity has been increasing day by day. Even if you don't mention this, rubbing black holes with your hands is still a bug magic skill. If we continue to develop according to the curvature of space and time, we might be able to distort time and space through alternative means. The more he thought about it, the gaze in Baiyu's eyes became more intense. This is simply a magical skill. Feeling Baiyu's burning eyes, Fujitora felt like he was going to be eaten alive. Me, I'm not interested in anything. Fujitora couldn't help but took 2 steps back, and inadvertently moved the sword behind him. What the hell? Hey, what do you mean by your eyes? What's with the suspicious defensive position of your sword? Baiyu, who came back from the dream, met Fujitora's movements. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that something was wrong. After he fully understood what he meant, a mouthful of old blood almost spurted out from his mouth. How can you accuse someone of innocence out of thin air? Baiyu couldn't help but widen his eyes. The word innocent was written all over his big eyes. I'm not interested in anything at all. Besides, with your body shape and appearance, it's impossible for me to be interested in you even if you are. For the sake of his own innocence, Baiyu quickly explained. You actually really like that? Fujitoro looked shocked, and a bright look burst out on his face. His eyebrows were dancing, and he began to explore with great curiosity. If you hadn't seen it with your own eyes, it would be hard to imagine that an honest man like Fujitora actually liked gossip. I'm going to fuck you. I only like soft girls. Cute girl, royal sister, intellectual, pure, black, long and straight, pink, that kind of thing, do you understand? Baiyu was so angry that his whole body was shrouded in black energy. The golden kunluo on his hands was dyed pitch black. If he couldn't explain it with his mouth, then he would definitely have to use his hands to explain it. Got it, got it? Under the coercion of the power of destruction, what else could Fujitora say? Of course he nodded crazily. Your life is at stake, the knife doesn't have eyes. It is true that the Navy will not bow to power, but he has never said that he will not bow to the strong. If you can't beat it and give in, isn't that a routine operation? As a general recruited from the private sector, Fujitora's understanding of the way from the heart is quite good. Snort. Just understand. Baiyu snorted coldly, withdrew the power of destruction and returned the sword to its sheath. I guess you have some winks. I just want to invite you on board and become our companion. Suppressing the fierceness on his face and putting on another expression, Baiyu said with a smile. When you invite people to join you, of course you have to be kind, otherwise what will happen if you scare them away? I'm a Marine. Fujitora tightened the purple bathrobe around him and politely refused. What does the Navy have? Before Jinbei was the Shishibukai, he is still our partner now. Identity doesn't matter at all. As long as you get on the ship, we are good brothers. I also have a super suitable ability that I can teach you. Baiyu said seductively, even throwing out sugar-coated bullets. Anyway, with a good-natured character like Fujitora, he will definitely get along with the hot-blooded Luffy. The captain will definitely not refuse him to join, so of course Baiyu must hurry up. Opportunity lures. This. Thank you for your kindness, but with my personality, I should not be suitable to be a pirate. Although your behavior is completely different from that of ordinary pirates, it is just not suitable. Fujitora only hesitated for a moment, then shook his head resolutely. Baiyu wanted to say something else, but Fujitora spoke first. I'm a Marine. Fujitora no longer avoided his gaze. He turned towards Kuromaku's body and looked at Shiryu. He said the same sentence as before, but his eyes and demeanor were completely different. The firmness on his face was self-evident. Even with a hint of a bit decisive, as if ready to face death. Even if you are threatened with death, are you still unwilling to join us now? Baiyu laughed in surprise. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 264. Fujitora didn't answer, just looked at Baiyu quietly. The purple bathrobe that had been tied was loosened by him casually for the first time. But the determination on his face is impossible to ignore. The sword in his hand accumulated endless gravity, demonstrating his determination. Even if you die, you will never be killed. No matter how weak the light of battle is, you will die in splendor. Laugh. Is this your determination? Baiyu sneered, and made a sword flower with his right hand. The destructive power entangled in Jin Kunluo dissipated in an instant. If you don't want to join, don't join. Baiyu smiled freely and walked towards the edge of the black curtain. He looked carefree and comfortable, as if he was not the one who threatened him with the knife just now. Thank you very much. Fujitora's face was a little stunned. The gravity that continued to reach the limit in the sword suddenly dissipated. After coming back to his senses, he lowered his head towards Baiyu's back and thanked him in an indiscernible way. He didn't know whether he was thanking Baiyu. he was merciful and still thanked by you for understanding him. Why are you thanking me? We will be companions sooner or later. Baiyu, who was walking slowly, suddenly turned his head and smiled confidently. Maybe. Fujitora tightened the purple bathrobe tightly, and the tone in his mouth was mixed with an unknown taste. Laugh. Okay, stop pretending to be serious and let's break this shady curtain. Otherwise, even if the world government doesn't notice anything fishy, the naval subordinates on your ship outside will start to cause trouble. Baiyu sneered, his eyes flashing slightly. It was as if he had discovered something fun and funny. Thank you. Fujitora nodded slightly and apologized again. The terrifying gravity surged out of his body, spreading crazily with him as his origin. Yo-ho! Is it that trick again? It can still be used after limiting the sight and color, and the control is really skillful. Baiyu raised his eyebrows, and started teasing with some surprise. Fujitora frowned and turned a deaf ear, and swung his sword down with some difficulty. Drink. With a low drink, even the veins popped out on Fujitora's ravaged face. Lord Momotu, General Fujitora, and that pirate have been in there for so long and there is still no movement at all. What should we do? Among the frightened soldiers, a tall guy finally lost his composure and took the lead in asking the long-legged Momotu next to him. General Fujitora was not around, and the reserve General Momo, of course, became the whole thing. The top decision-maker of the fleet. There was some hesitation on Daoto's face. She has a hammer to deal with such a terrifying guy. To put it bluntly, without the powerful sword in hand, her strength is greatly reduced. Even Sanji from the Straw Hats may not be able to defeat her. Mr. Peach Rabbit, you can't hesitate any longer. It will be dangerous if you wait any longer. You'd better issue the order quickly. Everyone is ready. As long as you give the order, all the weapons on the ship can be activated. Dr. Bekpanga's GDS is also equipped. If it is activated with all its strength, it will definitely be helpful to General Fujitora and eliminate that guy in one fell swoop. The sailors on the fleet looked at Daoto expectantly, hoping that she would make up her mind and give the order. Although Baiyu's performance was extremely terrifying, General Fujitora was the one who saved all their lives. How could he be left alone to watch the show by himself? Daoto felt a headache due to the earnest gaze. The light of the sword flashed in her eyes, and she was about to grit her teeth as she made up her mind. The next moment, a different voice sounded from the battlefield. Asshole! We haven't even taken action yet. You despicable Navy guys still want to interfere in the battlefield? Shamelessly asked us if we had. Nami stood on the deck with her waist clasped, the lightning in her hands shining brightly. Because of the darkness, she couldn't see Baiyu's irritable Nami. After hearing the harsh sound coming from the Navy warship, the whole eye was immediately blown away. You actually want to put a cold gun next to me and bully my man? I will fight with you. The little thief cat turned into a tomboy in an instant. Even Bailey didn't have time to feel sorry for him, and he threw out a coin on the spot. Super electromagnetic gun. The bright white lightning flashed through the air. In less than a blink of an eye, it crossed the barrier of distance and penetrated in front of the Navy. Not good. Daoto's pupils shrank for a while, and he didn't care what to say. He quickly waved the long sword in his hand and faced it. The cold sword light flickered on the sword, and the sharp sword light even cut through the air. Dang, dazzling white light. Blooming, a crisp sound sounded from the sword. The coin was split into two by the powerful slash, but the lightning inside did not disappear so easily. It immediately broke into thunder and wreaked havoc along the metal sword. Peach Rabbit's entire body, the person's body, was covered with a layer of purple lightning. Fortunately, her physique was not weak, and after acceleration and collision, the lightning was also consumed a lot. Otherwise, if she was caught off guard, she would have to fall to the ground seriously injured. No, Lieutenant General Doutu was attacked by surprise. The entire army is on alert, aiming heavy firearms, charging up, and preparing to attack. The damn pirate actually took advantage of General Fujitora's absence to sneak attack on Lord Momotu. Brilliant thunder exploded in the air. It was as if some mechanism had been triggered, and those who were already feeling uneasy. The extremely nervous naval soldier suddenly broke the string in his mind. No matter what, he took the initiative to control the instrument in his hand without even giving orders from his superiors. The scorching heat rose on the barrel of the gun, and dissipated plasma began to emerge from various powerful instruments. Cut. Who is afraid of whom? Zeus. Facing the glowing gun barrels on the Navy warship, Nami curled her lips. There was no fear on her face. She was full of disdain. She directly called out to her new cute pet. Zeus immediately understood what Nami meant and turned into a dark cloud in an instant. He yelled happily while spitting out thunder with all his strength. Nami nodded with satisfaction and took out a handful of sea stone coins in her hand. With the power blessing provided by Zeus, the electromagnetic gun no longer has to work hard to accelerate one by one. It has directly evolved from a single attack to a terrifying group attack. Although it is not as good as the previous naval battle, and the trio of an arrow 180,000 blows fired together. But it is by no means a game like playing house. In the raging thunder, electromagnetic acceleration and distortion. In the scorching barrel, plasma is ready to go. War, it was about to break out. Boom, a terrifying loud noise came from the sky, attracting everyone's attention. The sudden change caused the two sides with their arrows and crossbows to stop fighting, and quickly stop their attacks temporarily, without even bothering to start a fight. He frowned and looked up at the sky. What's going on? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 265. Meteorite. Another meteorite was summoned. Under the gaze of everyone, several huge meteorites broke through the atmosphere and fell from the sky. The violent friction ignited scorching temperatures, and even the air they passed was distorted. It definitely belongs to Fujitora-sama, he has used it on the battlefield before. Tisk, I also said it belongs to our vice-captain. He can even pull down real stars, not just a few meteorites with ease. The terrifying attack aroused endless debates between the two sides as soon as it appeared. However, an objective attack will not be changed by subjective speculation. Boom, boom, a huge meteorite, dragging a long flame tail. Falling from the sky, hit heavily on the overlapping layers of light curtains on the ground. It made a series of shocking roars. It was like dropping large-yield nuclear bombs one after another. The terrifying loud noise and impact made the entire sea surface shake. The onlookers, regardless of arguing about ownership, they quickly grasped the fixed objects around them. Otherwise, they would have to be thrown out under the violent shaking. After finally stabilizing their bodies, everyone quickly turned their attention to the place where the meteorite fell. Endless smoke, it was filled with sand and dust, covering the site, and the darkness blocked the sight. No matter how strong they were, at this moment, everyone's eyes were darkened and they couldn't see clearly. "Haha, Fujitora," a clear and indifferent voice rang out from the smoke. It instantly attracted everyone's attention. He said, "Fujitora, meteorites," so these meteorites were indeed the special attacks captured by General Fujitora, ha ha ha. A smart navy. S eyes suddenly lit up. After hearing the content of the voice clearly, he immediately laughed happily. The proud laughter filled the sea, lifting the morale of the navy which had been suppressed. But, he smiled, but his voice seemed to stiffen. As if he had realized something, There was an unpleasant panic on his proud face. He. If the meteorite was smashed by Fujitora, then who was speaking? This voice sounds like a joke from a winner. A cold voice sounded from behind. Jinbei smiled ferociously with a shark face and began to hit the target. No, no, that's a general. The clever soldier froze and looked away. The billowing smoke finally began to dissipate. The scene inside made his eyes widen. Amidst the flying dust, a gray figure stepped out. It was Fujitora, who had cross scars across his face and eyes. Sword marks of all sizes were all over his body, and the only thing he was thankful for was that there wasn't much blood. Holding a sword in the dust, he moved forward tremblingly, with a posture that wavered 3 times every step. People couldn't help but worry that he would miss the mark and fall to the ground. General Fujitora. Daotuo was about to step forward to help, but another slender figure emerged from the smoke, as if he had seen something incredible, and the pupils in his beautiful eyes shrank. How can it be? He wasn't hurt at all. Daotuo looked in disbelief at Baiyu's figure walking out of the smoke. The slender figure walked out of the billowing dust and smoke. There was no trace of injury from top to bottom. No. To say he was injured is an exaggeration. There are no traces of battle on his body. His face is relaxed and free-spirited, and his clothes are clean and tidy, as if he has a constant cleaning skill. It doesn't look like he has experienced a battle at all. Compared to Fujitora, who is covered in scars, this guy, it's like I just came back from a tea party. Bingo, the truth is revealed. Congratulations to Peach Rabbit for unexpectedly seeing through everything. Is this guy's strength already so terrifying? Daotuo's voice was a little dry, and his throat felt a little itchy. In just a short time, the guy who was originally on par with him in strength actually improved by leaps and bounds, making him unable to catch up. Oh, from the time I came out until now, you have been looking at me without blinking. You must have fallen in love with me, right? Baiyu pretended to be handsome, curved his mouth, smiled and started teasing. His eyes couldn't help but see Peach Rabbit's slender thighs. Tisk, the legs are so playful. Damn it, bastard. I am a mighty navy, how could I like a despicable pirate like you? Daotuo's beautiful face was inexplicably stained with a hint of crimson. The scorching gaze made her feel hot inside. When she came back to her senses, she quickly suppressed the restlessness in her heart and stepped on the long legs, said viciously. Damn that guy. His strength is actually to this level. And he always looks at me with that damn look. Daotuo, who couldn't block Baiyu's gaze, could only endure it secretly. He looked at me viciously. He almost bit all the silver teeth in his mouth to pieces. The beauty glared, and she really had a different flavor. Tisk, you said you're not interested in me. You are in a daze, and you are staring at me. Daotuo, you are really taking the initiative. Baiyu chuckled and continued teasing. Sister you, etc., of course, the more teased, the more interesting it becomes. Anyway, she won't be like a little girl who can't hold back her tears. Damn little thief, shut up. Return my Jinkunluo quickly. Daotuo couldn't bear it any longer, and his face was both ashamed and angry. The anger that had been accumulated to the extreme. All of them exploded in one fell swoop. No matter what, just attack him directly. Groan. A clear sword chant sounded, and the long sword came out of the body and slashed towards Baiyu with all his strength. Taking action in anger, Fuji's attack on his heart was completely beyond what he could usually imagine. The strong sword energy was slashed out, and even the sea was stirred up by the aftermath. A bottomless crack was also cut out on the island. Plowing the ground all the way, bringing with it billows of dust, we arrived in front of Baiyu. Interesting. Baiyu raised his eyebrows, a flash of sword light flashed in his eyes. One sword style, profound meaning Zhang Gang. The bright sword light flashed, hitting the weakest part of the sword energy. The sword energy collapsed in one blow. Swept by the sword light, the collapsed sword energy directly hit the wind and sand in the sky, wiping them out completely. As for Baiyu, his body is still spotless, and his control over power is evident. This thing is in my hand, of course it belongs to me. Want to go back? That's not entirely impossible. How about I treat it as your betrothal gift? Baiyu shook the golden kunluo in his hand. He curved his lips, smiled and teased Dao Tu. He just finished his trouble with Lao Bangzi, so it's not too much to find a beautiful woman to wash his eyes. Ah! Mean. Obscene. Shameless. Hateful. Peach Rabbit stepped on his long legs angrily and made a huge hole in the deck. A burst of impotent rage, followed by a prairie dog's roar. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 266. Seeing Dao Tu, he was almost driven crazy by this guy. Fujitora finally couldn't sit still and continued watching the show. White Feather of the Straw Hats, what on earth do you want to do? Dragging his trembling body, he raised his sword slightly, and the terrifying gravity spread out from his body again. General Fujitora. Momoto looked at Fujitora with admiration. Even though he was seriously injured, he still stood up and faced the big devil alone regardless of the danger. What kind of spirit is this? This is the naval spirit of sacrificing oneself for others, not fearing power, and daring to sacrifice. Of course Fujitora didn't know that. Muto was crazily trying to top him up, and he was sweating in a hurry. What are you still making a fuss about? Go and get the business done, otherwise you'll be in trouble with the world government. He was full of confidence on his face, but felt very weak in his heart. He quickly winked at Baiyu. He didn't want to really fight against Baiyu's beast. His strength was something that a human could handle. He was both yin and yang, old man hermaphrodite. Baiyu couldn't help but the corners of his eyes twitched a few times. The destructive power brewing on Jin Kunluo was quietly dispersed by him. He glanced at his mouth boredly. With such a big posture, he thought Fujitora wanted to fight again. Oh! I didn't expect it to be a fake match. In this world, can there be more sincerity and less tricks? Baiyu looked up at the sky and couldn't help sighing. He looked like a compassionate old scholar. Hello. Do you dare to take action? If you don't, I'll run away using gravity. Fujitora's face turned dark, and he had the urge to run away. At this time, he was still in a daze. Can this guy really solve the world government? I am doing my duty now, and it's not too late to give the government a red heart. Fujitora fell into pondered. Come on, don't worry, it's coming. Seeing that the boat of friendship was about to capsize, Baiyu quickly looked away. Dao Tu, there is something serious to do this time, so I won't accompany you for now. When you figure it out, you are welcome to come to me at any time. Baiyu finally set his sights on the place where Kaido was imprisoned. However, he still didn't forget to tease Peach Rabbit. Seeing the angry blush on her face, he felt relieved. What? Dao Tu's pupils shrank for a while, and the hand holding the famous sword became nervous unconsciously. This guy said he didn't want to accompany him, so he couldn't just leave. There must be some conspiracy. What do you want to do? A pair of beautiful eyes stared at Baiyu, as if she wanted to detect some clues from him. Unfortunately, what she responded to was the increasingly fierce light of the sword in Baiyu's hand. One sword style, profound meaning, breaking the sea. The dazzling sword light exudes the edge of cutting everything. The thousands of meters long sword energy makes people unable to even think about resisting. Dao Tu's furious blow is as small as the sword energy. Like a toothpick. The island was split into two in an instant, and the sea was also divided into two halves like Moses divided the sea. Even the soft mud pools on the seabed were exposed under the sword light. And this terrifying sword energy, pointing directly to the ship beneath them. What to do? What to do? Dying. Is this the strength of the head of evil? It's too terrifying. Lieutenant General Peach Rabbit, General Fujitora, help, help. Under this terrifying sword energy, all kinds of artillery shells and heavy firearms are just here to stuff his teeth. The sword energy coming towards them directly destroyed their confidence. They all collapsed and collapsed, unable to organize a decent defense at all. Flying Tiger breaking air strike. 6 style 6 king spear. Saber-tooth fruit 10,000 swords. Giant bull fruit powerful crash. Scattered attacks are useless in the face of sword energy. Even if it is weakened by 1/10, there is still no change. It is still across the sky, making people unable to resist. Gravity knife tiger. 1 sword flow Zukong. 2 sharp slashes shot up into the sky, which were completely different from the previous attacks. They were originally somewhat effective. Unfortunately, one was intentional and weak, but lacked strength. The other was powerful but unintentional, pretending to be a fake punch. Boom, a terrifying sword. Chi cuts everything off. It's over, it's over. Navy, everyone. Dao Tu closed her eyes in despair, the corners of her eyes flashing with crystal light. Sister Yu's face was filled with despair, regret, and indignation. Her hands, which were as white as green onions, were choked with blood. Laugh. I didn't kill anyone, so why are you crying? Bai Yu sneered, threw out 2-finger-thick sword energy, and hit Peach Rabbit. He likes to tease her, just for bad taste, but it doesn't mean that Bai Yu likes her to cry. What? Peach Rabbit raised his head as if he had just woken up from a dream, and saw a huge creature suddenly appeared in Bai Yu's empty hand. Kaido. Peach Rabbit's pupils shrank. How could Kaido, the 100 beasts that the Navy had finally missed, appear in this place? Moreover, this guy Bai Yu was carrying him in his hand without any resistance, just like carrying a chicken. Dao Tu's already shaky outlook on life was suddenly shocked again. Look at what I'm doing, don't you care about those Navy? You don't really have a crush on me, do you? Bai Yu chuckled and started teasing. Snort. Dao Tu selectively ignored this guy's words. He quickly raised his spirits and looked over carefully. No, okay. Several naval ships were cut from the middle like a hot knife cutting through butter. A flat cut surface was left on the hull of the ship, which was so smooth that it reflected dazzlingly in the sun and could almost be used as a mirror. This is not a problem at all. After all, the sword light just now was so terrifying. It would be strange if it didn't have this effect. But, no one on the boat died. Dao Tu looked at it for so long, and all of them were bumpy and unsteady. Injured by a fall, half of the sword wounds were not visible. You. Dao Tu burst into tears and smiled, looking towards Bai Yu. Leave it to you, I have to go. Remember the betrothal gift I mentioned, ha ha ha. After Bai Yu laughed for a while, he directly held Kaido in his hand and jumped onto the Sunshine Miles. You. Peach Rabbit's heart tightened, and he wanted to follow. But behind him came the cry for help from the Navy's distressed people. Although Bai Yu deliberately avoided the Navy in order to make an agreement with Fujitora, no one was hurt. But, the ship that was cut off by the sword energy was not fake. It was suddenly cut into 2 pieces by the sword energy, and of course the crisis of shipwreck was inevitable. If we don't seize the time to abandon the ship and run away, the only outcome will be the destruction of the ship and the death of everyone. Bai Yu is not a holy mother, and she still cares about the after-sales service. Vice Captain, Jin Kunluo, have you really decided to use him as a betrothal gift? Zoro couldn't help but asked. Certainly. Bai Yu nodded, and before Sauron could say anything, he continued to speak. Will the bride price come back after the wedding? A smile appeared on Bai Yu's mouth. Left pocket, change to the right pocket, it's me as expected. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 267. In a magnificent hall. 5 figures of different heights, fatness, and thinness sat around a small round table with different expressions. Surprisingly, it is the world government, the apparent supreme leader, the 5 old stars. The 5 people just looked at each other quietly, without saying a word, as if they were going to sit there forever. Jingle bell. The crisp ringtone broke the tranquility in the space. The long straight-haired 5 old star wearing a dark blue suit frowned. He was closest to the phone and reached out to take it. Uh-huh. He listened to the report on the phone with a slightly cold face. There was no emotional change in his voice, but his face became colder to the naked eye. Clang. After drinking some tea, he finally hung up the phone after listening to the report. At this time, the frost on my face is almost seeping out. What happened again? Wulaoxing, who was wearing a black suit, with white curly hair, a fluffy white beard, a flat hat, and a scar on the left side of his face, looked towards him. What else could happen? Of course it would be those guys from the Straw Hats again. Wulaoxing, with long straight hair, pulled out a chair and sat down. Them. What happened again? The blonde 5-year-old star in a burgundy suit leaned back on the chair casually. Humph, Kaido. The escorting navy was raided by the Straw Hats, General Fujitoro was defeated, and Kaido had been kidnapped by the man named Baiyu. The long straight-haired 5 old star snorted coldly and told the whole story. Baiyu? Is that the guy who cut off the tip of your first-generation Kaititsuo sword? The blonde Wulaoxing turned his head and winked at the bald Wulaoxing wearing a kimono next to him, a bit provocatively. Andre Artemis. The bald 5 old star suddenly became furious and glared without saying anything. Even the first-generation ghost in his arms flashed a flash of blood. Laugh. If you don't have time to fight with me, you might as well go and repair your weapons. The dignified 5 old stars were holding a broken sword. The blonde 5 old star sneered, not looking threatened by him at all. The terrifying domineering energy wrapped around his fingertips. Even if he just stood still, the air around him still felt like it was being torn apart. If he attacks with all his strength, there is no doubt that his body has the power to penetrate the void. The needle point is facing the wheat on, and the momentum is about to burst out. Enough. If you continue to make trouble, are you going to let Lord I'm come out to see you? Wearing a green suit and with a birthmark on his head, the bald 5 old star was full of energy. He stopped their confrontation and shouted low. The mustache on his face moved up and down along with his angry face. Lord I'm. The pupils of the 2 people shrank, and a look of fear flashed in their eyes. The aura of the confrontation suddenly dissipated, and the calmness barely returned to before. That's almost enough, Andre. No one expected that the person named Baiyu could be so strong. Even if we met. The long straight-haired Wulaoxing spoke quietly, and the unfinished meaning in his words was self-evident. Snort. The blonde Wulaoxing snorted coldly, leaned back in the chair and said nothing more. But deep in the golden pupils, there was some deep fear. Although he couldn't deal with the bald head, but with the first-generation ghost in hand, his strength cannot be underestimated. Not to mention, he brought the King of Heaven, Auranos. The strength of today's young generation is really terrifying. Hadley was right. There is no point in worrying about victory or defeat now. The top priority should be how to deal with that guy. Wulaoxing, who was wearing a black suit, with white curly hair, a fluffy white beard, a flat hat, and a scar on the left side of his face, took over the conversation and said, "How to deal with it? Unlike Roger, he not only has terrifying strength, but also controls the power of Auranos. Don't you still naively hold the idea of capturing them on your judicial island and putting them on trial? The methods used to deal with Roger are ineffective on him. The bald 5-old star said angrily. He held the first-generation ghost in his hand, and the gap on the tip of the knife was extremely glaring. King of Heaven Uranus. It's really difficult. Something that has disappeared for so long actually appears in his hands. The long straight-haired Wulausing muttered in a low voice and couldn't help but frown. It seems that we can't act too hastily. We have to avoid direct conflict for the time being and plan things slowly. The long straight-haired 5-old star's eyes were full of fear. To be able to rely on swordsmanship to defeat his companions like this, his strength is simply unfathomable. What about Wano country? Will the vacated Halustone mine be given away like this? If we allow that guy to develop and get worse, where is the prestige of the world government? The blonde 5-old star, with an angry look on his face, looked like he didn't agree. The opponent's strength is far more frightening than Roger's, and it's not like he is seriously ill. None of the Straw Hats are simple, including Zoro, Jinbe, Ace, and Captain D. Luffy. If you do it forcefully, the price will be too high. The long straight-haired 5-old star shook his head. Is it possible to let them develop as they please? Lord how do you want to explain it? The 5-year-old star with a mustache, blowing his beard and looking angry. At first glance, he is a bad-tempered guy. What I said, you have to figure it out slowly. Or do you want us old guys to come together? He has copied the gate fruit in his hand. If we are not here, the emptiness inside Marijoa will attack, disturbing the tranquility among the flowers. Even if he was contradicted head-on, his long straight hair and 5-old star's face would still be as plain as water. Just state your point of view calmly like this. This. The remaining 4 people were speechless for a moment and had no words to reply. Hateful. Doorfruit. The grumpy man with a mustache blows his mustache and stares while sitting on a chair. His face looked angry, and aggrieved. For many years, they have always decided everything. This is the first time that an ordinary person has forced me into such a situation. Hadley, tell me, what should we do? The blonde 5-old star got off the back of the chair, leaned forward and propped himself up on his legs, folded his fingers in a thoughtful manner, and looked at him. It was supposed to be a crushing situation, but the menmen fruit in the opponent's hand completely turned it around. Although our own side holds 5 nuclear weapons, King of Heaven, our Ranos, and the opponent only has 1, it is incomparable in a fight. But, the enemy is so damn mobile. It can appear anywhere at will. Nuclear threat: the greatest time is when he is in the nuclear bomb silo preparing to launch. Coupled with the opponent's teleportation skills, this threat is directly maximized. Nuclear bombs can be airdropped at any time, just ask if you are afraid. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 268. If 5 of them are allowed to take action, as immortals who cherish their lives, at least 3 of them will take action when they are absolutely sure of self-protection. It is impossible for one of them to be so stubborn that they risk their lives. And once that guy is let go, it will be a complete rift. If he was reckless and used the power of the menmen fruit to set fires everywhere, the price would definitely not be something they could accept. Even if they rely on the power of Uranus to stop him, they can only survive with only 5 copies. With that guy's terrifying strength, a one-on-one fight is just a gift. 5 people were able to hold on to 2 or 3 places of defense. We must not give up. After excluding the Holy Land, Marijoa, there are only 1 or 2 places left. Bayou's bare feet are not afraid of those wearing shoes, but the world government has a big business. Not to mention the 20 allies, even in the directly controlled areas, there are definitely not a few. With the speed of the fruits, they are simply exhausted to deal with them. In the end, they will either be surrounded and call for reinforcements, or they will be completely trapped in an isolated city. Without being completely sure about killing that guy, it is definitely the stupidest way to push him into a corner. It is not easy to dig a hole for yourself. We cannot take action and activate the Uranos first in case the situation develops to an irreversible level, but the Navy has no such concerns. As a Navy, it is their duty to safeguard justice on the sea and fight against evil pirates. Otherwise, why are we raising these guys? The long straight-haired 5-old star spoke slowly. When he talked about justice and evil, he couldn't help but reveal a strange smile. Navy? No. Have you forgotten the Kizaru among them whose identity is questionable? Also, a former naval marshal of the Warring States period on the battlefield did not dare to face a pet with a bounty of 50 belly. He was entangled by a pet and couldn't get away. The match fixing was too serious. The old star with a mustache slapped the table with a glare. The anger on his face couldn't be suppressed at all. If it hadn't been for Bayou, what they were talking about today would have been how to deal with these two guys who were like undercover agents. Got it? That's right, don't forget the information that has been circulated recently, that guy Aokiji was responsible for letting go of the Devil's Son Robin during the O'Hara incident that you were planning. And that old guy Garp gave birth to a son first, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Long, now has a grandson captain of the Straw Hats, Luffy. As far as I know, when the war started, he helped that boy Bayou escape. His position, Do I need to say more about the relationship between the Warring States period and him? The blonde 5-old star sneered, his golden eyes filled with disapproval. The two new generals who are recruiting troops, Green Bull's position is unclear, and Fujitora is diligent, but his main thoughts are probably on the Navy. After the bald 5-year-old star added something indifferently, he sat quietly on the chair, hugged his beloved knife, and closed his eyes. As a direct superior in the Navy, silence is the best way to deal with this situation. If he wasn't the only one participating in the war, it would be unreasonable for him not to speak. He wouldn't even want to say half a sentence. The Navy is almost hollowed out by moths. It has become so rotten that you are simply. The 5-year-old star with a mustache glanced angrily at his long straight hair. They wanted to curse a few words to vent their anger, but they still kept their mouths shut for the sake of their respective identities. The people in front of him are not his subordinates, they are all beings of the same level. Having a bad temper does not mean that he is not smart, because offending a colleague with his bad mouth can only be done if he has a bad temper, and there is no essential conflict between them. Tiu, what do you think? The long straight-haired Wulaosing shook his head and avoided his gaze. He did not speak, but looked to the other side, where the old man with a flat hat had been quietly listening and thinking. The 5 old stars with flat hats raised their heads in surprise. Although they were not interested in this kind of topic, since they were all named, they had no choice but to speak. I agree with Hadley's approach. Since it is inconvenient for us to take action and it can easily lead to uncontrollable situations, it is good to use the Navy instead to form an intermediate buffer. The flat-hat 5-old star stopped tapping his fingertips and spoke calmly. Buffer? Don't just deliver food. His hands were so empty that he had a navy like this. How could he use it as a buffer? Don't be a meat bun and beat a dog, there's no coming back. The blonde 5-old star snorted coldly and glanced at the bald man next to him holding a long knife in a daze. His face was full of disdain and accusation. The two retired top combat forces have doubts about their stance, and the current marshal has long been stained. The only surviving senior 3 generals are still full-fledged undercover actors. Although the 2 newly promoted generals who were recruited during the recruitment process may seem to have clean backgrounds, they are not upright and successful after all. If this is the case at the top, what else do the middle and lower levels need to say? You can't say that. Kizaru Sengoku, the 2 of them can only be regarded as suspected undercovers. The CP agency has been investigating for so long, but they still haven't found any evidence. How can they be said to be undercovers without evidence? As for Garp, after all he is the hero of the Valley of the Gods incident. Although he has refused to be promoted, he still bleeds and sweats for the world government. Random slander without evidence is indeed a bit much. The thing about Ching Pheasant letting Robin go, didn't he also kill Hagvar who resisted the order? Salon? Robin might be an accident, or simply fake news. Now that everyone has spoken, the 5 old stars with flat hats simply said it happily. While opening the document with the judicial logo, he pointed at the white and black words inside to support what he said. Even if what you say makes sense, so what? Haven't you seen the Navy's performance in the war? Just because they want to stop the Straw Hats. The 5 old star with mustache sneered. Although the gaze in his eyes was slightly loose, he still refused to admit defeat at all. If they can't do it, is it possible to let Shishibukai go? Or are you willing to do it yourself? A cold voice came from my ears. Holding the first-generation ghost, the bald 5-year-old star who closed his eyes and meditated like a wooden man finally spoke. This. There was a hint of hesitation on the mustachioed face. If you face this kind of terrifying monster alone, you might die. Thinking of the power shown by Baiyu in the image, he couldn't help but have a flash of fear in his eyes. He has a big temper, but he is not stupid. Only a fool would agree to something involving life-threatening matters. For immortals like them, they must be extremely cautious. Risk your life to fight? Non-existent. Under the aggressive tactics of the bald 5 old stars, none of them were hit, and they all died down. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 269. Very good. Seeing that the fire was almost done, the long straight-haired Wulaoxing, who was watching the fire from the other side, finally spoke. Of course I won't place any hope that letting the Navy deal with them can delay the Straw Hats' actions and buy us as much time as possible. Lord he is about to wake up completely. By then, a mere white feather will. Sitting in the chair, he leaned forward and leaned on the table. He crossed his fingers and let his long straight hair fall from his shoulders, giving people a heavy sense of oppression. There was a hint of disdain in the corner of Leng Ran's mouth. Lord is it finally here? Completely. His power. The remaining 4 people's pupils shrank in horror. The most excited person with mustache suddenly stood up. Only the 5 old stars with flat hats looked a little calmer and were still stretching out their arms. His fingertips tapped lightly on the table, as if he was thinking about something. But if you look closely, you can see that the speed and weight of his tapping are completely chaotic. As for your concerns, sittings, they actually make sense. However, our world government has controlled the world for 800 years. Even the blank is under control, and there are no rare treasures. If the strength is not enough, just strengthen it. The long straight-haired 5 Lao Xing proudly said. Rational. That's right. The 5 people looked at each other and smiled, their expressions instantly relaxed. As the top leaders in the world, they have enough confidence in competing for financial resources. The artificial devil fruit has been developed, and it can be distributed directly to improve the strength of the middle level. It is difficult to improve the strength of generals. We can equip them with some weapons. And it's time for the secret weapon that Baker Panga researched to begin to be released. The long straight-haired 5 old star methodically stated the countermeasures he had already thought of. It was well organized and the narrative was meticulous, and he soon received approving looks from several other people. Anyway, Uranus, the king of ancient weapons, is tightly in his hand, as long as he is not facing a guy like Baiyu who also controls the king and has bug abilities like the gate fruit. No matter how strong they are, it's just like that to them. As the bald 5 old stars said, personal power is never a match for God. In this case, we can also consider other powers, such as red hair. The 5 old stars with mustaches, for the rare moment, calmed down their anger and thought carefully. That's okay. In this case, then maybe some people can be recruited from the world government. Anyway, with us in charge, Marijoa is absolutely as stable as a mountain. Although the rest of the world is not stable, it is nothing more than a moss disease compared to the straw hats. The blonde 5 old star frowned slightly, and a glimmer of light flashed in his golden eyes. As if their thoughts had opened up, the 5 old men spread their thoughts one after another and started talking in a variety of ways. There seems to be a reserve general named Dao Tu. Although his strength is not good now, it is also because he lost his weapon. As long as he is given a supreme sharp sword, it should not be difficult to regain his strength. Stopping tapping his fingertips, the 5 old stars with flat hats raised their heads and suggested the ultimate sharp knife. There are still some in the secret library. Let's find an opportunity and let the CP agency send them over. The long straight-haired 5 old star just pondered for a moment before nodding in agreement. By the way, the first generation ghost in your hand is also damaged. You have to open the secret vault anyway, so why don't you go in and pick one too? As for the supreme sharp knife, there should be more than one in it. As if thinking of something, he suddenly turned his head and looked at the bald Wulaoxing on the other side, who was holding a knife and closing his eyes to sleep. Need not. The bald 5 old star flatly refused without any hesitation. I have enough ghosts. I will take back his missing parts with my own hands one day. This is the dignity of a swordsman, and it is my bottom line. A stern look flashed in the eyes of the bald 5 old star, and a monstrous sword intention emerged from his body, soaring straight into the sky, as if it was going to break the house. Not only by you who took away his sword, but also the one who dared to fuse the green algae head on the tip of his sword. He had an intuition that the green algae head was definitely his enemy in this life. Also, that's up to you. Seeing that his attitude was so determined, the long straight-haired Wulaoxing naturally gave up his original idea. Laugh. I think you just don't dare to face failure and still take it back with your own hands. Didn't you lose badly enough before? The blonde 5 old star sneered. His words were always so harsh when it came to his sworn enemy. Snort. Instead of worrying about my sword, I should think about how to deal with his request. The condition for that guy to stop is 10 devil fruits. Even if we pay in installments, we will have to hand over 5 of them soon. The bald 5 old star snorted coldly, turning a deaf ear to the blonde's sarcasm. Just 5 pieces. Just 5. You still can't understand what kind of strength he has in the capital of 7 waters, and what kind of strength he has after getting the 20 fruits in exchange for Pluto. Before the blonde finished speaking, he was directly interrupted by the bald man. He snorted and made sarcastic remarks, leaving the blonde speechless. Clone. Can this guy increase his strength through devil fruit? It's really tricky. The flat-hat 5 old star tapped the table again with a thoughtful look on his face. It would be best to give none, but this would completely break the relationship and things would be back to square one. Give. Must give. The long straight-haired man with a slightly gloomy expression decided on this matter. But a hint of cunning flashed across his face. We only promised devil fruits, and there were no limited categories. The artificial devil fruit developed by Baker Ponga was just right for him. His copying fruit is terrifying enough if it can copy the power of the devil fruit, but it's not so exaggerated that even artificial ones can copy it. The long straight hair expressed his thoughts. But, what if he finds out? There was some hesitation in the eyes of the bald 5 old star. Will not. Baker Ponga's research has come to an end. From the appearance, there is no difference at all from devil fruit. Besides, he is not a scholar who specializes in this research. Furthermore, even if there is a problem, we can just negotiate the price when the time comes. If he takes advantage of it, we are not vegetarians. If we really want to fight, why should I be afraid of a battle? A killing intent flashed in the long straight hair's eyes. Good. Right. The fighting spirit spreads among the round table, and he can firmly hold the position of the pinnacle of power among all living beings. If you are just an ordinary politician, you would be looking down on the heroes of the past and present. Regarding Pluto, even though the drawings are different, I still can't relax. Not only him, but also the Sea King, the Fishman. Don't worry, we have arrangements. A faint voice lingered in the magnificent palace. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 270. Ice Missile. The endless ice blade bloomed out of thin air and turned into fragments to attack in the distance. It easily penetrated the thick steel plate and formed thick frost on it. Aha! Robin, who just walked out of the dungeon, was hit by the ice crystal hit him, but luckily he was quick enough to dodge in time. Even so, his face was covered with frost. The frost was not a big deal, but the power behind it made Robin feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. I thought again of that day when everything was destroyed, and that lazy guy. Immortal method, thousands of hands, Buddha on top. Robin immediately activated his big move. If it were that person, he would have hesitated for a moment, and the end would definitely not be good. Even if it was not for revenge, he must use all his strength for Bayou, and he must not let him use what he just got. Kaido was taken away from her again. In desperation, Robin lost her proud composure. Overlapping flowers spread out from her body, and in an instant, they formed a terrifying behemoth. An existence even more astonishing than the great Buddha of the Warring States period. At the beginning, tens of thousands of hands were beating at him. A certain fat blue man was so frightened that his liver and gallbladder split apart. Cold sweat flowed down his forehead, and his pupils shrank to the size of silver needles. Stop, stop. Robin, wake up, I am Jinbe. Fatty Lan shouted at the top of his lungs. He didn't dare to fight Robin. Not to mention that he was not at the beach and his strength was greatly reduced. Even if he gritted his teeth and could beat her, there was still a man behind her. I don't want to offend Bayou for nothing, so don't look back and hold grudges on others. What? You are Jinbe, no. After seeing the figure not far away clearly, Robin's pupils shrank. After she came to her senses, she quickly gritted her teeth and deflected the attack direction of the Buddha on top. Bang! Thousands of giant hands hit the ground hard, shaking the ground. No, it's okay. Jinbe was so frightened that he touched his fish head. A feeling of surviving a catastrophe rose from the bottom of his heart. Just a little bit worse. He really had to play GG to get the lunch. The terrifying thing just now, the attack completely hit his scalp. Not bad, not bad. Huh. Jinbe, who had escaped with his life, was breathing heavily. He shook off the ice on his forehead, but luckily he spread a layer of ice on his body in time. Otherwise, even if he is not beaten to death by the thousand-armed Buddha, he will still be roasted into dried fish by the high temperature caused by friction. Jinbe, I'm sorry. Robin said apologetically, his little face full of self-blame. It's okay, I'm not injured. Fatty Lan scratched his head and told the story openly. He was afraid that she would think too much, so he changed the topic and said. What is it not? Who do you think I am? There was some curiosity on the ferocious fish's face. Of course, it's Aokiji. In this season, ice appears, and ice cubes are used as a means of attack. The only one who has the frozen fruit is Aokiji. I thought it was because Kaido's whereabouts had been discovered and Aokiji came here to take it away. Robin, who had thought too much about admitting the wrong person, couldn't help but blush on his face. How could it be possible? Even if they discovered it, Aokiji wouldn't be able to do it so quickly. It's only been a day or two, and the naval headquarters is not close to here. Fatty Lan shook his head while playing with the ice crystals in his hands. I misunderstood. But, Jinbi, isn't your ability water escape? Why can I suddenly control even ice crystals? Robin looked curiously at the ice crystal that was constantly deforming in Fatty Ian's hand. It was crystal clear and exquisite, and it was simply a work of art. But the cold air coming from him was enough to prove that this was anything but ordinary. Didn't I say before that my water release is about to reach its bottleneck and I'm about to activate my second skill? It's him. It's said to be ice crystals that even flames can't melt. Fatty Lan said with a proud look on his face. His little eyes were fixed on the blue ice crystal in his hand, and he was full of fighting spirit, as if he saw a fiery red figure in him. I can overpower that guy again. I see. Robin nodded, thoughtfully. Hey, I haven't talked about you yet. How is the road sign history text asking? Fat Lan raised his head and looked at Robin curiously. Stop talking, that guy is simply a mute. I almost lost my voice when asking questions, but he still refused to cooperate and said nothing useful. Robin shook his head, his face full of helplessness. It seems that there is no other way to deal with conventional methods, so the deputy captain can only come. Fatty Lan stopped what he was doing and suggested. I thought so too. You must have a way. I came up from the dungeon to find him. Robin nodded, his eyes full of approval. Oh, I thought I heard someone calling me just now. A portal appeared out of thin air, and in the white light coming from behind the door, a slender figure came out. Speaking of Cao, Cao said. You. Vice Captain. You nodded and walked towards Robin. Snored. Someone is finally willing to come. Robin looked arrogant. Hey, didn't I just come here after finishing my work? You chuckled lightly. You must have just come back from Hirikoshiki and there. Robin said with anger on his face. Isn't this for the aftermath of the battle? From now on, Wano country will be the rear base of our Straw Hat Pirates. You said righteously. Snored. The base is a base, but I don't know if someone is lingering for so long, is it for the country of Wano, or for the general of the country of Wano? Robin rolled his eyes. If others don't understand, how can she understand? You is a standard hands-off shopkeeper. Even the matters on his own ship are all resolved by the chief steward Nami. Are you going to discuss Wano country matters in person? Instead of believing this, it is better to believe that sows can climb trees. Hey. You laughed endlessly. I heard something I shouldn't have heard. Shouldn't the deputy captain kill the fish and silence them? Fatty Ian's face drooped, his little eyes full of fear, and he wished he had two less ears. He trembled with his little feet and wanted to leave quietly, but his huge body made it impossible for him to keep a low profile. Cut. Robin said angrily, and instead of dwelling on it, he started talking about business. What should we do with Kaido? His mouth is too stubborn to pry open. There is no clue as to the whereabouts of the coordinate history text. Pointing to the end is a kind of knowledge. As a smart woman, Robin will certainly not break the casserole and ask the end. She has to keep tossing and makes You angry until she is willing to give up. After paying a little attention to the heat, the initiative was given back. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 271. Is that so? Looking at Nami, who looked troubled. You chuckled lightly, and the slight displeasure in his heart was instantly wiped away. Then let's go down and have a look together. Bai Yu took the lead and walked briskly in front. A man's face. After Robin chuckled in his heart, he also shook his head and followed. Jinbei, follow carefully. A clear voice came to my ears, startling Jinbei, who was tiptoeing to leave. Either die early or die late. The vice captain will definitely not be so cruel. Fight. Looking at the dark entrance to the dungeon, Jinbei gritted his teeth and stamped his feet, stepping in as if he were dead. In the cage made of sea tower stone, there is a huge figure with muscles wrapped around it. At first glance, it seems that there is no good-natured person staying inside. There were horns on his head and scars all over his body, but they had all turned into healed pink flesh. Only a jet-black sword energy remained on the chest, which cut the squirming flesh and blood again and again, making it impossible for the wound to heal. Kaido, stay safe. It's you, Bai Yu. A pair of eyes as big as copper bells lit up, penetrating like two ghost lanterns in the dark dungeon. Savage murderous intent like a ferocious beast overflowed, and the temperature in the entire corridor dropped sharply. It's me. Bai Yu walked out slowly with Jin Kunluo in hand, his expression unchanged at all. He Xianqing easily broke through his overbearing look with a wave of his hand. Call. Robin, whose face turned slightly pale at the back, felt much better now. Let you not bring down the three-color domineering force. No matter how powerful the skill is, it still needs a corresponding body to carry it. To strike, you need to be strong. Bai Yu turned his head and took the opportunity to teach him a few words. It's time for you to hand over the text of the history of the road signs. Bai Yu turned his head and looked at Kaido with a serious look. Ah! Do you think I might give that to you? Kaido sneered, full of disdain. Although he is a prisoner of his subordinates, the Emperor's domineering power has not weakened at all. He, Kaido, is not a weakling. You will. Bai Yu narrowed his eyes slightly, with a look of certainty on his face. The power of destruction entrenched in his chest surged, and Jin Kunluo was dyed with a dark etch. The power from the same source, as soon as it appeared, aroused the sword energy in Kaido's chest. Hiss. Even he couldn't help but take a deep breath at the sudden tear of the wound. Hey, you don't think that this little pain can make me give in? Kaido's big copper eyes were flashing with bloodthirsty edge. The pain did not scare him, but instead aroused the murderous intention in his blood. You don't think I can't kill you because I'm a waste from the navy? A killing intent flashed in Bai Yu's eyes, and he retorted. Die. Am I, Kaido, afraid of death? I want to die, but I don't know how long it's been. I really hope you can fulfill my wish. Kaido cracked the corners of his mouth, revealing the white teeth inside. It doesn't look like a human, but like a wild giant beast that arrived from ancient times to the present. The power of death is still there, not to mention the serious injury. Haha, you are not afraid of death, but what about your daughter Yamato? In the past, if you were still there, even if you were captured by the navy, with your record, you would still be able to escape one day. Of course, no one would dare to do anything to Yamato. But, what if news of your death spreads? Can those guys who are ready to move still hold back? If I post another bounty, what do you think will happen to her? There was a hint of coldness on Bai Yu's face. If it were before, the red stone would have been dispensable to him. But after experiencing the previous battle, the importance of Rafdru has increased sharply, and the red stone has obviously become indispensable. Existence. In order to achieve the goal, necessary sacrifices are acceptable. Yamato. You dare. Kaido looked furious. She was his most beloved daughter. Her big copper bell eyes were as red as if she were about to spit out fire. Her strong body, carrying the aura of wilderness, rushed towards Bai Yu. Even the indestructible the sea-towered stone cage was hid with tiny cracks. You can try. Bai Yu looked at Kaido calmly. Although he is not a heinous person, the good mother has nothing to do with him. 63 of the Dao of binding, binding with chains. Thick snake-shaped chains appeared out of thin air and locked tightly to the rioting Kaido. If Hayashi can't do it, he will use Kido skills. If Kido still doesn't work, there are many skills waiting for him. It wasn't him in his heyday. Opponent, you still want to make trouble in his hands. Dreaming. Hateful. Asshole. Sparks of anger shot out from his big copper bell eyes, glaring at Baiyu fiercely. Cut. Baiyu stared back fearlessly. What are you looking at? You are 100 Beasts Kaido, not Red Eye Kaido. Is it possible that you can still fly out of crows and fire out Gundam? Take. Go. Kaido reluctantly took out a roll of sheepskin with mysterious words printed on it. It seems you are well prepared. Baiyu took it fearlessly and opened it a few times. After finding no mechanism, he handed it to Robin behind him. Marvelous! Robin exclaimed with excitement. With her astonishing knowledge, she could be sure something was genuine as soon as she saw it. Another brand new historical text of the road sign was obtained, and now she was just one piece away from the final puzzle piece. My daughter, Yamato. A beast-like roar came out of Kaido's throat. The already ferocious face was even more distorted to a terrifying level. Rest assured. Although I am not a good person, there is no need for me to lie to you about this kind of thing. Baiyu glanced at his mouth and didn't want to look anymore. Instead, he turned his head and greeted the two people who were in a daze next to him. Let's go. It's time for us to go back when things are over. The captain has already been clamoring for a banquet. After that, Baiyu took Jin Kunluo on his arm and took steps toward the exit of the dungeon. Robin and the other two didn't want to face Kaido alone, so they quickly caught up with him. Thanks. After the three of them were about to disappear at the end, a low voice finally sounded from the corridor. It seems to be grateful, but it also seems to be sad. No need, just exchange. Baiyu didn't even look back and kept moving forward. Vice Captain, are we leaving like this? Jinbei, who followed behind, had a bit of surprise on his face. It seemed as if he was a little surprised by Baiyu's crisp action. If not. Baiyu raised his eyebrows and looked over lightly. Hey. I thought, Vice Captain, you would be like Doflamingo. After some talk, Kaido was taken under his command and brought aboard. Jinbei chuckled, and the shark's face was squeezed into a ball, like a discolored chrysanthemum. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 272. Talkative. Baiyu looked over indifferently. Well. Realizing that he had said the wrong thing, Fatty Lan quickly covered his mouth, leaving only his two small eyes exposed and blinking in fear. I didn't say anything, boss, really. Fatty Lan said with a frightened look on his face. Snort. Baiyu snorted coldly and glanced at him. Looking at his funny look, he was too lazy to say anything. He also wanted to trick Kaido into boarding the ship just like he did with Brother Ming. He was known as the strongest creature in the world, the physical strength of the body, the power of the fish fruit to control wind and thunder, and the effect of transforming into a dragon. He was quite interested. Unfortunately, his mistress Big Mom was hacked to death by himself. He could easily send out fish. The fish fruit is a powerful devil fruit. The relationship between them will never be simple. Baiyu doesn't want to plant a big mine on his own ship just for a share of power. Besides, with Luffy's hot-blooded protagonist character, he would never treat a demon king like Kaido who was wreaking havoc on Wano. He was too lazy to cause trouble for himself. Devil fruits and other things could not be found anywhere. He had to hang himself on this tree. On the shore, Baiyu rode in the lead, and Robin followed beside him holding a pile of parchment rolls. The back was occupied by a huge fat blue man. The three of them walked back and forth on the soft sand like this. Huh? It seems like there are guests. Could it be that people from Wano are here again? Next to the tall and magnificent Sunshine Miles, there was an exquisite and extraordinary boat on display. Robin looked up from the parchment, with some surprise on his face. The people from Wano must have been too diligent in coming here. Only then, how long have you been gone before a new wave comes? It probably has nothing to do with Wano country. If you are one of them, you can just get on the boat directly. Taking a small boat is completely unnecessary. Bayou shook his head and said, "No. Could it be someone else?" Robin's astonished face showed a little suspicion. If it were from other forces, how could such a small ship sail? The hull looks pretty good, but it would be difficult for a ship of this size to navigate the Great Waterway, right? This is not a calm sea. A small boat cannot withstand all kinds of disasters on the Great Waterway. Maybe. We'll find out if we get on board and take a look. Bayou smiled without saying a word, as if he had already guessed the result. Bad guy. Robin stamped his feet, swearing was like flirting. Well. Fatty Lan covered his eyes, barely able to see. The cold dog food was blown randomly on the face. Snort. Fatty Ian's artificial expression received a vicious look from Robin. Lion Senkaria. Armed with color-hardened rubber machine gun. The terrifying slashes and endless rubber fists collided together, causing endless aftermath. The wind and waves raised were enough to blow adults away. The wide sea surface caused waves and splashes due to their fighting. Splashed on the boat. The proud man of heaven, the city wall made of iron, the dragon moves, the lion roars, the tiger roars, the wolf runs, cutting off the heaven and the earth before it collapses. The 81 of the binding Deo breaking the sky. If it hadn't been for a thin light curtain covering the ship, even the Sunshine Miles would have been half destroyed by the aftermath of their fight. When Bayou and the other two people just boarded the ship, they saw such a fierce battle scene. Snort. You brat, you know how powerful I am. With the rudder on his head and only one hand left on his body, the real man Golden Lion said to Luffy arrogantly. The dark armed collar was wrapped around his rubber arm, which was covered with quilts. Damage left by slashing. Hateful. I won't give in so easily, I want to become the Pirate King. Luffy shouted loudly. The tips of his hair quietly turned silver, and even his pupils were filled with silver light in excitement. The fight was quite intense. Bayou raised his eyebrows and quickly got into a show-watching posture. Swordsmen and so on are indeed the natural enemies of rubber fruits. Even if they have high-level armed colors, they can only make up for the gap slightly. It is still too far away from completely leveling the impact. Much more. But Bayou had no intention of stopping them from fighting. Instead, he winked and stopped the crew members who were about to help. The rubber fruit was indeed defeated by the swordsman Tien. But Zizi not the ultimate intention kung fu. A fox-like cunningness flashed in Bayou's eyes. If he didn't completely smooth the edges of the Golden Lion, this chess piece would be difficult to use. It seems you are not giving up yet. Then let me show you my true power. I don't know how powerful the Golden Lion is, but I still think I'm confident. After so many years of holding back, I came out to wander the world, and was brutally tortured everywhere from navy to pirates. Now I finally have the upper hand. Of course I have to be proud of myself. After all, this guy opposite me, but where is Bayou's captain? And what is it, the fifth emperor on the Great Waterway? 8 Gates Dungia Formation. Luffy turned a deaf ear during the battle. Red steam was rising endlessly on his body. The strong blood energy turned into a long dragon entangled. The powerful physical strength was like a small sun, emitting endless light and heat. No way. The Golden Lion's heart sank slightly, and he suddenly felt something bad. But, want to stop now? Late. Luffy's eyes were red as he was caught in the fight. The posture of being ready to go left no room for regret for him. In desperation, Golden Lion could only bite the bullet and push forward. So scared. Labor and management are flying pirates, lion ghosts. Just a straw hat. The Golden Lion's eyes narrowed. Thinking of the sword energy that had just wounded Luffy, his shaky confidence suddenly returned. Lion Million Cutting Valley. Compared with the previous small fight, there was hundreds of times more sword energy. He slashed out quickly from his legs, which were turning into after images when he slashed alternately. Boom boom boom, punches hit Luffy's fist one after another, each time thousands of sword energy are being wiped out by blood energy every second, but the next moment they come one after another. Dang, clang, clang, fragments of sword energy, and the aftermath of the fist wind, hit the barrier of the ship, and the light curtain, the beaten bell rings. No, I can't hold it anymore. Meili's little face wrinkled into a ball. The little loli, who is fearless, had a rare look of uneasiness and fear on her face. The 81 of the binding Deo breaking the sky. Although there was no chanting, the new barrier was far better than before. The originally shaky light curtain suddenly became as stable as a mountain. Not to mention just the aftermath of the battle, even there escaped sword energy and fist wind. The whole set hit it, and it was all. It couldn't make much waves. It was Baiyu who was watching the show on the side, and he took action with a snap of his fingertips. Although he just wanted to watch the show, it didn't mean that he could tolerate the boat being destroyed by these two guys.